me ask, Danny, this...
Okay, hold on. So
What?
I'm going to interrupt you, even though this is your show.
No, it's your hour. Go ahead.
Because I have a specific reason that I've always wanted. I've been waiting to come on the John Curley Show.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, some years ago when my mother died, I got, tons of emails from people, very nice and everything, and you sent me one.
Huh.
You probably don't remember.
I do remember.
You said, most people say, sorry for your loss, condolences, and it's very nice and everything, but you said something unique that nobody else said, which was, I want to hear more about your mother's life. Yeah. And I was so touched by that I've always wanted to come on and thank you for that. And now that I buttered you up, what would you like to say about my column?
Well, first of all, did you take the advice? Did you write anything?
Well, I had already written. I don't want to go on and on about. Right. So no, I didn't take the advice.
Okay. Well,
but anyway, I was touched by it, and I appreciated that. And even though you've shunned me all these years,
I'm not shunning you, Danny. Come on,
stuck with me.
So don't be one of these sensitive liberals that's crying all the time. You are here. Here's my list of reading. So I get up in the morning. I read my friend Dan Flynn from American Spectator. I look at the Seattle Times, and I look for your articles. How many do you do a week now? Do you try to pump out 3 or 4 of these things a week? What do you do?
No, I'm supposed to be doing 2, but they've pared me back to 1 for, it's kind of personal, but I had a medical thing, like spine problems, so I'm trying to work that out.
Okay, all right.
But anyway, let's go on.
You So the last
called me about the fickle city.
Right. And also because I listened to you on there with Blue City Blues. So I want to talk to you about some of the stuff that you had brought up on that. So you were talking about the Seattle has a vision, right? And that they had 2 different visions. They seem to be somewhat similar, but the visions, how would you describe them if you were an ophthalmologist, Danny? What are these visions?
Well, there are. So for people who don't live in Seattle or who view the world through kind of a blue, red, left, right, Republican, Democrat kind of lens, as I'm guessing you do. Seattle does have sort of competing blocks in the narrow bandwidth we take up on the far left. And it's kind of, they call it like the center left moderate lane, and then we have the sort of far left progressive lane. And they do have competing visions for how to solve, the most intractable problems in the city. And they, all this because you work at KIRO, they fight to the death over them. And I guess I would agree that there's some commonality that they could agree on. But my point in my column is that we keep sort of like metronoming back from one to the other. And as a result, there's sort of no real progress made on anything. And so with homelessness or crime or public drug use in particular, the competing visions are there, but nobody ever really marshals enough support for long enough to actually effectuate and really try out their vision. So let's take an example. You probably want an example.
Yeah,
public drug use.
Mm-hmm.
So public drug use, which has bedeviled the city, we have we have a public drug use ordinance, which basically says, you can't smoke fentanyl in front of Nordstrom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet we do have a pretty big faction in the city that doesn't really want the cops involved in drug use because they see it as a public health problem. And so their vision is, you've heard it all. It's sort of harm reduction. Come in with counselors, not with cops. Let's focus on treatment, not punishment, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so we kind of can't decide whether to go soft or hard on that issue.
Right, but Danny Westneat from the Seattle Times, I have to say that to reset so everybody knows who you are. Is it could both visions, because one is to the left and one's further to the left, could both visions just simply be wrong? right? And maybe you need an entirely different vision. You ever read the book? You're very smart. You're an educated Ivy League East Coast elitist. You ever read Edward Banfield's The Unheavenly City?
I have not.
Okay, so he came out in this thing in the 1974. And so he basically says that the problem with, the Democrat cities that are liberally led, what the problem is that the voters themselves are rich and they have a guilt of prosperity, and they sort of see themselves like they feel bad for those people that are not as well off as they, not as well educated as they. They see income inequality, big problem, homelessness and addiction, and they want someone to solve it. So they want the government itself to come in and solve these social problems, when really the government is ineffective at solving social problems. And he said that that's not what the government does. It should do potholes and put out fires and things like that. But getting in there trying to fix these social, intractable problems of poverty and drugs and that type of thing is not what the government does well.
Yeah, well, I guess I agree with the first half of that Seattle is very rich, or at least the major part of the city is, and so we have sort of a noblesse oblige view on the world, which is like, yes, I'm so rich that these issues don't really affect me, but I want to, be compassionate about them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so that may lead to some of the conditions you're talking about, but I don't agree that government can't at least assist in solving these problems. I mean, one of the problems with public drug use is the public part, right? So if you have drug users congregating in a neighborhood like in Little Saigon, which we have here, then who else is going to solve that problem? Like, there has to be some sort of social compact that rises up and says, okay, it's not acceptable that businesses are being shut down in Little Saigon because of this sort of street scourge that's going on. Mm-hmm. And so who else is going to solve that?
Well, the government created the problem when Bruce Harrell was in here, and I said to him, don't you believe that all of your compassion and all of your caring and all of your services attract people? And then I told him the story about a guy did a ride along one night with the police, and he was 23 years old, had his wisdom teeth taken out. He was living in Boise, Idaho, got addicted to Oxy, couldn't afford Oxy, couldn't buy it there. And a friend said, hey, you should go to Seattle because you can do as many drugs as you want. They won't bother you. You can sleep on the street. They'll feed you. They'll house you. They'll give you housing. You could live in Seattle and you could take your drugs there. And that's exactly what he did. I said, so Bruce, in a way, you're attracting this. You will attract this, and now you're trying to solve the problem, but you're attracting it to begin with, and your number is going to keep going up every single year, as we have seen, and you keep throwing money at more and more of these things, and you're just attracting more of them. And then he gave some answer that now has him, conceding to Katie Wilson.
Well, maybe, but to Bruce's credit, he wasn't in favor of letting them do whatever they want.
Right.
Which was the sort of straw man that you just set up. And I don't think the majority of Seattle is either. I think they're conflicted on what is the best way to solve the problem, which is, and again, I agree with you somewhat that it's going to require more than government, but it didn't really work, and when we were doing the war on drugs either.
Right.
So coming in hot with cops doesn't have a very good track record on the subject either. And so, I don't know. I'm a frustrated, I believe, somewhat non-ideological resident of Seattle, because I just want them to just pick a lane and do it.
Danny, you describe.
I don't see them pick. When they say, "Hey, we need more treatment," I'm like, "Yes, we need more treatment. So let's do it."
Yeah.
Like, how come we haven't built the treatment? So anyway.
Well, you described. That's okay. In Blue City Blues, you said, well, the voters are very idealistic and they're very compassionate. So going back to Winston Churchill, whoever originally said it, right? If you're 25 and you have no heart, right? If you're 35 and you're still a liberal, you have no brain. Is it that Seattle itself is 25? I mean, very idealistic, very compassionate, but really not very practical, and they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And with that, here comes your question. Your crystal ball, Danny Westneat, that I know occasionally you look into. What do you think happens? Where are we a year or 2 years from now with Katie Wilson?
Well, it's a good question. I think, the one good thing, I know Katie relatively well. The one thing about her, and I know if you talk to her, you probably picked this up, is she is a socialist dreamer, but she's also quite pragmatic. She has a pragmatic streak, and even when she was writing columns, which, death to a column or to a radio show is sort of on the one hand, on the other hand, right?
Yeah.
But she would do that in her column writing. She would say, here's one side of this, and then here's the other side of it. And so I think she's more pragmatic than some of the progressives we've had in there in the recent past. At least on the city council.
Is there some concern with somebody without any experience in there and being so young and not really knowing how the levers of politics work? It creates a vacuum that nature abhors, and then people rush in to basically take control and try to push her here or push her there. What forces will those be if you accept my analogy and my setup to that question?
Well, she's not that young. She's 43.
Well, compared to you and I, Danny.
Compared to you and me.
Yeah, you and me. Sorry. To me, not you. Yes. But
she does have no management experience or governing experience. But that doesn't mean she doesn't, her role from City Hall was trying to guide it and rally it and manipulate it from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have had activist mayors in the past, like Mike McGinn was one. And, they had trouble. To be honest, he was running sort of an activist campaign from his office against the Highway 99 tunnel, which you may remember.
Yes.
And he ended up losing that fight. But and he wasn't a terrible mayor at all, but he did consume up a lot of the oxygen of his office trying to run this campaign. That's what he was. He was a campaigner.
Yeah.
Wasn't really. So I don't know. A mayor could set up their office where they do the political side and they have a chief of staff who does the management side.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a concern. I mean, the reason Bruce Harrell fought his way back into this race is that his backers spent nearly $2 million sort of highlighting that she had no experience in government. And it was a very effective argument.
Not effective enough, obviously,
no,
right?
Not effective enough.
So, we often look at California and the stuff that flows from there seems to come up here with the jet stream of some bad ideas. But San Francisco recently has decided they're moving to the right. For instance, with free ballot props, one of them was, if you're receiving welfare, you got to get a drug screen. 2, police are now allowed to pursue. Plus, they're now going to have public surveillance. So I think the city of San Francisco has realized the error of their ways, and now they're coming in pretty hard on a lot of this sort of stuff. And maybe Seattle has to experience what San Francisco has experienced in the last 5 or 6 years. I think they moved they were the 4th biggest city. Are they now number 6? Is that where they are now?
6 in market size.
6 in market size. They're losing population. Seattle might have to go through this to then decide, well, that didn't work. That's why, I endorsed Katie Wilson. Did you know that, Danny?
I did not.
Yeah, I said, let's try socialism. Let's see if it works.
Well, you put her over the top.
Wait, whoa, Danny. No, because a lot of people said, you shouldn't have done that because now we've got her. That's what some people here that work at
they're
KIRO
like the Godfather.
The Godfather, yeah. The magic touch. By the way, you have been in this city for how long?
30 years or so.
Okay. You came from the East Coast. Were you educated at Brown? Is that where you were?
Yes, I actually came from Ohio. I'm a Midwestern boy.
Okay. Ohio's like New Jersey, but only more so. Do you consider yourself a Seattleite, or do you still consider yourself as, living in Seattle, but, New Jersey, or Ohio. They're both the same. Do you consider yourself truly a Seattleite now?
I consider myself to be Mr. Seattle.
Well, from now on, when we have you back on the show again in 15 years, we'll be sure to refer to you